most fucked up thing you've experienced at a NYE party? Story 1, Y2K. Right as everyone was transitioning from the one of the countdown to Happy New Year, my buddy flipped the main breaker to the house. Panic did ensue. Story 2. Absolutely naked guy came walking into the bar and sat at the bar like nothing odd about it. This is a neighborhood bar, but it's a little famous. A lot of famous actors and such pass through, because it's been in a lot of movies and always has good music. So mostly people are ignoring the guy or whatever, just sort of wondering when the cops will show up. But I'm outside looking in because I was enjoying the air over the levee. Big crowd. Nobody else being naked and not too drunk yet. But the bartender won't turn around and even look at the guy. She's just been standing at the bar facing the mirror the whole time, acting like she's polishing a glass and the place is basically full, but she won't even address him. Eventually, she starts sobbing, and someone says something to the naked guy, and it gets a little confrontational, and a couple of the bigger guys help him make up his mind to leave, but he's not apologetic at all. And it turns out he was the bartender's father, and he found out she'd done a film or something similar, and he was trying to make a point. Yeah, he's on a list now. Not that it matters. Everybody for 3 towns knows who he is after that. Unfortunately, the bartender couldn't hold it together the rest of the night, and that's how we found out the whole thing. Story 3. My brother ate an entire tray of Oreos by himself, and later that night, he was vomiting pure black. My other brother walked in on that while half asleep and thought he was having a nightmare. Story 4. A girl I barely knew getting abandoned at my friend's house because her friends didn't want to deal with her. I've had it happen multiple times in my life where I end up taking care of random people, but this girl went on the roof with her friends, then got so hammered that she couldn't get down without help, and they decided it wasn't their problem and left her. After getting her down, I spent the night holding her hair in the bathroom and making sure she made it through the night, which didn't bother me too much because someone had to do it, and we all know how awful it can be to go through that sort of thing. What broke my heart was her laying next to the toilet begging me not to leave her like everybody else. I miss college, but looking back, it's frustrating how many friendships were nothing more than, I'm here for you, but only as long as I'm having fun. Story 5. About 10 years ago, I went to a club with a large group of friends for their NYE party. Everything seemed to be going all right until a couple of my friends tracked me down and said, "There's something wrong with Jimmy. I think he needs your help." Jimmy, name changed, was, and still is, my best friend since we were in grade 2. I was taken to the area where he was, and Jimmy was completely out of it. He couldn't function at all, was complaining about chest pains, slurring his words, and basically every other symptom that you would mentally check off before you call an ambulance. Thinking that this is just some sort of alcohol poisoning, I tell everyone that we need to get him to a hospital and that I'm calling 911. "No, don't do that," someone in the group says. I look at them like they're crazy, and I'm starting to realize that this might be more than alcohol poisoning. We all took E and he said it wasn't working, so we gave him some more. We don't want to get in trouble. It ends up that these morons let a drunk guy take 3 pills in succession because Jimmy said he couldn't feel anything. Now that an overdose is a potential, I'd definitely call 911. The ambulance comes and takes Jimmy away. A few of us, including some of the people that didn't want an ambulance called, head to the hospital. By the time we get there, they already have Jimmy strapped down because he's shaking, and it appears he's trying to bite his tongue off. A doctor comes and asks us for more information. I tell them everything I know. They say that Jimmy will be all right, but maybe it would be a good idea to let his family know. This felt like a time for you jerks to grow up and accept responsibility kind of move from the doctor. I agreed and said we would. The friends all say that they can't be there because they know they will get shredded by the father, who is a very passionate, relatively old-school Italian man, and they bail. I make the call. "We'll be right there." The groggy, confused voice on the other line says, "I'm alone and sitting in a hospital waiting room watching Ryan Seacrest ring in the new year on a shitty TV hanging in the corner, waiting for what I know will be an epic verbal evisceration from the Italian father." "What are you here for?" a drunk native man says to me from across the room. I tell him that my friend isn't feeling well and try to curb the conversation as quickly as possible. "My sister broke my arm," the man slurs as he lifts his limp, swollen arm up for me to see. "I dropped her heroin, so she hit me with her fake arm." He says this with an almost proud laugh and continues to mumble about it. I get up to walk around a little, but before I can get very far, the entrance doors slide open, and there are Jimmy's mom and dad. The dad storms up to me and starts demanding answers. He wants to know where his son is. He wants to know how long he had been doing drugs. He wants to know why I didn't try to stop him. I really have no choice but to take it. His wife looks at me sympathetically and tries to calm him down. The nurse takes the parents to their son's room and I am alone again. About 20 minutes go by and the mom comes out and says that everything should be okay and that they're going to stay with Jimmy a little longer, and she apologized for how it all went down. I head home and fall asleep. Later in the morning, Jimmy calls and apologizes for the situation he put me in, and says that his dad wanted to apologize as well. He still has no idea how the other friends really left him out to dry multiple times that night. TL.dr. Best friend overdoses on E that friends gave him. Friends tell me not to call ambulance. I call ambulance. Friends tell me not to call parents. I call parents. Have an enlightening conversation with drunk man whose sister broke his arm with a prosthetic appendage over spilled heroin. Best friend's dad verbally destroys me because I'm the only person there to take the fall. Best friend apologizes next day. Still, best friends. Story 6. When I was 15, I went to a NYE party in the Castro district of San Francisco. I expected to see lots of crazy, naked people and supreme gayness. I saw all of that. As midnight approached, a beautiful 30-something woman who knew my sister came up to me and started telling me how cute I was and how beautiful my hair was. It was the 90s and I had long grunge-style hair, among other things. She kept looking over her shoulder at me for the next few minutes as she walked around the party, and my eyes were transfixed on her. At midnight, we all started blowing horns and cheering, generally making lots of noise. And then it slowly fell silent as everyone started kissing. It didn't really matter much who or what you were kissing, apparently. I was there with my sister and I was not kissing her, so I was basically looking around totally uncomfortable. Suddenly, someone grabbed my shoulder and spun me around. It was the beautiful lady. She asked me if I had ever kissed before, and I shook my head, no. I felt her lips press against mine, and then her tongue force my mouth open and give me a deep, passionate kiss for what seemed like an eternity. As she pulled away, I nearly fell into her arms. She gingerly ran her fingers along my face and whispered, "Happy New Year, sweetie." She walked off and I never saw her again. Thank you, crazy 30-something beautiful lady, for being a super creeper and mouth-fucking this 15-year-old boy. I've never forgotten you. Story 7. Friend decided to throw a NYE party. I helped with shopping and setting up. By 10:30, no one had shown up. Host guzzled 2 bottles of champagne and locked himself in the bathroom. Doorbell rings around 11 miles, and there are a dozen people outside. More continued to show up. Proceeded to have a great party in our friend's house while he spent the night passed out in the bathtub, naked, except for a cowboy hat. Edit. Yes, I am, now, aware that something similar happened in a crappy millennial movie. No, Elvis Costello did not ask me for my dip recipe. Story 8. Friend's wife slipped off the back of our hot tub and got wedged between the hot tub and the house. Almost had to call the fire department to get her out. She was so embarrassed she tore her ACL in an attempt to get herself out. Alcohol was a factor. Update. Additional info. An important detail that was left out, her husband and Redditor suggested that I provide, was that it was 10 out that night, so we had to keep pouring warm hot tub water on her so she didn't freeze to death. Story 9. The party begins. Drinking ensues. Devin, a young man who is built like an ogre, quickly becomes inebriated. Revelers form into various groups. Devin takes up a prone position on the couch. One of the impromptu assemblages of people decides they want to sit down. Devin proves difficult to rouse, but eventually sits up and scoots over. A conversation begins. "Hang on," Devin shouts. The party goes nearly silent, save for the music. "Hang on," Devin says again. The conversation resumes. After a few minutes, Devin bellows, "Hang on," once more. Someone finally asks Devin what he wants. "What?" asks Devin. "What do you want?" The other person repeats. "Hang on," Devin replies. "Hang on, hang on." The phrase becomes a joke. Other people start repeating, "Hang on," to each other. "Oh yeah," Devin suddenly exclaims. He then barfs all over everyone seated next to him. There are screams and some laughter as people flee. Devin lies back down on the soiled couch. Good. Story 10. Paula. God damn it, Paula. She was a friend of a friend, invited a few people over for New Year's Eve. Her condo had a great view of where there would be fireworks. Her brother was there, along with his boyfriend. Come midnight, everyone's a bit trashed. Someone mentions that the third-floor balcony would have a great view of the fireworks, so everyone rushes up there. Turns out Paula, her brother, and her brother-boyfriend decided to have a threesome. I was right behind my girlfriend at the time, and she opened the door to that bedroom right in front of me. Paula was getting it from both ends. Brother and boyfriend. We watched the fireworks from the street. Story 11. The year was 2011. Heidi just turned 18 and resolved to not be a dork anymore. I managed to get myself invites to a cool kid party. Booze, drugs. I was excited and nervous, but ultimately ready for something new. I'd never been to a real party before. I remember almost vomiting when I went to knock on the door. I was so nervous. It opened, and the girl I knew who had invited me pulled me inside. She was a little drunk, and in hindsight, I think she might have had a thing for me. So she basically drags me over to where her friends were. They let me drink straight out of their bottle. It was gross, but I was so excited to finally be cool. Then it happened. A dude at the pong table turned around, and on his face were what could best be described as glasses. Except they had 2011 over the front. The 0 was an eye hole, and there was a circle cut out of the first one. It was disgusting. Why the would you continue making for wearing the glasses of the year after there stopped being consecutive zeros? I haven't left my house since. Story 12. Came down with a case of norovirus. At first I thought I just drank too much, vomiting. Then the other end started to rumble, and I knew I was in trouble. It lasted for 2 full days. Worst time ever. Story 13. I was in the army at the time, and we had a massive party in some bushland near our base. This lady, who had been a girlfriend of one of the guys for about a week over a year before, found out about it somehow and turned up. She was a little drunk and a lot crazy, ended up in a psych hospital a few years later, and had driven her car through the bush and almost hit one of the guys. She was asked to leave about a dozen times, and then made the mistake of picking a fight with the only guy for 100 miles in any direction who was more crazy than her. We managed to stop him from hurting the woman, but then he took out his best stabbing knife and slashed all of her tires, punched holes in every body panel, busted every light, and finally used the roof of her car as a trampoline for a couple of minutes. Story 14. My cousin had recently broken up with my friend, both of whom were at the party. My friend decided the best thing to do was to get drunk and go attempt suicide by laying down in a snowbank on my front lawn. He failed. It's a stupid way to try to die. Story 15. I don't know about fucked up in general, but the most fucked up thing that has ever happened to me. I was passed out on the floor at about 3 or 4 a.m. Another guy at the party had passed out before me, and my friends drew all over his face. He woke up and went to the bathroom, saw the dicks and insults all over his visage, and flipped out. The dudes that did the drawing decided to say it was me. So as I'm laying passed out under a blanket on the floor, he creeps over me. I wake up to a quiet but determined voice saying, "Herrenbruggs." Yes? Boom! Punched in the fucking ear full strength. I went full rage mode. Only time I've ever actually thrown multiple punches at someone. Jumped up, right hook to his face, another jab, and slammed him against the wall and another jab to his face. Only thing that stopped me was that there was a piece of art, friend's parents' house, that was about to fall off the wall from me throwing him against it. So in a weird half-apologetic, half-confused moment for both of us, I asked what was going on. He said I drew dicks on his face. I said I went to bed like 2 hours ago, and I don't know who told you that. I awkwardly let him go, and he stumbled out of the room. I laid back down and was told the full story of why I was assaulted in my sleep by the actual culprits the next day. Story 16. Party at my house. At midnight, a girl threw herself at her husband for a kiss so hard she put his through my wall. They were both too drunk to notice at the time, but when I saw it later and started asking who the put-in-shaped hole in my wall, and she was picking weird pieces of drywall off the back of her husband's sweater, she put it together. They were mortally embarrassed. He came over the next day and patched it good as new. Story 17. I leaned in to kiss a hot stranger at the strike of midnight, and surprisingly, she went for it. But she puked in my mouth and all over my face. Projectile puke, to be accurate. It was awful. New Year's. Story 18. It's probably nothing too crazy compared to all the other stories in here, but I went to a crazy NYE party last year with burlesque dancers hanging from the ceiling, acrobatics, a huge champagne glass that a lady stripped and swam in, etc. Anyways, at midnight, a bunch of confetti cannons go off and it snows confetti in every crevice of this place. I legit feel bad for whomever had to pick this stuff up after the party. I shoot my glass of champagne they handed out from a chick who was walking around wearing a metal dress designed to hold champagne glasses, and suddenly realize it's just a glass full of champagne-soaked confetti. I immediately run to the bathroom and throw up confetti for a good 2 minutes. I came back and proceed to get yelled at by my wife for missing our New Year's kiss and getting too drunk. I tried to explain, but nobody believed the confetti glass. Story 19. I got cut one year. I asked a guy if I could see his really cool knife. He let me see it right on the back of my hand, made a 3-inch gash in my hand all the way through the skin. Story 20. A question that I'm almost early enough to answer. It's freshman year of college, and everybody's back home in NYC. My friend invites our close friend group over, and one person brings a friend, who brings 2 friends, who invite more people. The classic snowball out of control house party. Party's going well. I'm very drunk and I've done a little coke. It's just before midnight and I don't want to make it a 3rd straight year of kissing a bottle of Prosecco as I pop it at midnight. So I'm flirting with this one girl I've never met. She and her friends are really cool, and I hang out with them for most of the party. Midnight comes and goes, and my close friends have apparently up and left, so I just stick with these guys, who say that they've found another party, so I go with them. We come up to this super fancy apartment building in Chelsea and go up the elevator into this massive penthouse. Nicest place I've ever been. I immediately notice 2 things. 1. Everyone at this party is over 40 years old. We are 19 and wearing suits or otherwise fancy clothes. 2. Everybody at this party is an uncomfortable level of high on something I didn't want to with. They looked like zombies. Glazed eyes. Some were drooling. Some would just randomly groan. A woman was convulsing on the living room floor. A man was kneeling and punching the air, while a live cover band played exclusively Foo Fighters songs at about 2-3 normal speed. It felt like time had slowed down. Noped the out. Story 21. We were taking 2CB at a house party, and a girl who lived a few houses down suddenly appeared in the house all beaten up. Her eyes were swollen and she was terrified. Her boyfriend had beat her up and she'd run out of the house. She heard the noise where we were and ran in. He came to the door a couple of minutes later looking for her, but was told she wasn't there. Anyone who's ever taken 2CB will know it comes and goes in waves. Most of what I remember of that night is me trying to talk to her 1 minute and then laughing in her face while she moved in and out of cartoon form. She sat there for about 2 or 3 hours in the middle of all us until some relative came and got her. The next day, there were more than a few of us who questioned if she was actually there or not. Story 22 was working in a bar in Tokyo back in 94-95, NYE as a barman. Two Saudis sitting by the bar and an Iranian gentleman standing behind ordering a beer. Saudis told the Iranian to off and a punch-up followed. All of them got chucked out. Hour later, the police shows up as the Saudis were employed by the Saudi embassy and went to complain that they had been treated roughly by the bar staff bouncers. Had to spend NYE at the police station giving reports until 8 a.m. Story 23. I used to hang out with older people when I was in high school. When I was 15, they were 19. I got invited to a party at a chalet, got drunk, and ended up getting raped by some random guy in an upstairs bedroom. Thankfully, a friend came looking for me, so it didn't last long. It's made me not want to go to house parties anymore, even though it was almost 20 years ago and I was an idiot teenage girl. Story 24 was at a NYE party in a small apartment several years ago, and there was a woman there who had peed her pants and either didn't notice or didn't care. It was very obvious, and after a while it started to smell too. But she was just casually laughing and talking and acting like it was no big deal. Story 25. I worked NYE in an ER 2 straight years, and that was rough. Lots of accidents, gunshots, stabbings, and drunks. Some young guy drove into a river and was brought out frozen hours later to be pronounced at the hospital. An Asian guy was drunk and vomiting whole bean sprouts. And the usual drunks were extra hammered. Oh yeah, there were lots of sick people too. In the morning, one of the doctors bought us shots. Story 26. I saw a guy curl one off at a party. Yup, he shat in a flower pot in front of everyone. He was drunk as and kept telling girls he was an F-16 stunt pilot, but my mate knows him and says he's an unemployed plumber from Hull. Story 27. I witnessed my sister attempting to kill herself by swallowing a whole bottle of Tylenol almost 30 years ago. She was supposed to be watching my sister and I while our parents were gone for the weekend. Her boyfriend was supposed to sneak over, but he chose to go to a different NYE party with another chick. Her friend called her up and told her about it. I called grandparents' house when I thought things were going weird. Story 28. At a NYE party at a local bar in NY, my buddy sees a guy who had bullied him 10 years ago throughout grade school, sitting at a table full of people. Fast forward a couple hours, everyone buzzed, partying. Commotion suddenly coming from the back of the bar. My friend had jumped up on the table and was kicking the dude in the face, yelling stuff like, "You thought you were tough when we were kids. Let's see how tough you are now." My buddy was a big dude and a college athlete, so no one knew what to do. And the dude was literally getting his face kicked in and probably had little or no clue as to what was happening. Plus, when he jumped on the table, all the drinks and food went flying and were all over the other people sitting there. I made it through the crowd, pulled down my buddy and bear hugged him, and he was still trying to pound on the guy. Finally got him out the door where he continued raging outside, calling the dude out. "Come on out, big man. I'm gonna punch your face some more." The guy was a mess. Broken nose, cuts, etc. His wife was screaming and crying. Just a mess. The party, however, continued. Edit. When I did the math, I realized that my friend hadn't seen the guy for around 10 years, not 15. We were about 22 when it happened, and hadn't seen the bully guy since 8th grade, which is about 12. Story 29. Was in college at a bar for NYE with a group of friends. I was talking to a girl when my friend grabs me and says, "We have to leave." Other people I was with got into a fight with the bouncers. Bad idea as a window was broken and my friend's forehead was bounced off a pinball machine. We're kicked out and pile into a car to leave. I was riding in the front and puked all over the passenger. I still remember it running down his arm and into his lap. He gets out and we try to clean it a little, but have to get out of there. Pile back in and we're driving out of the parking lot when, bam, we hit someone. His head hits the windshield and it cracks. We get out and, luckily, we all knew him, my best friend. He was with us at the bar but decided to walk home. Apparently, he was getting into a fight with a guy in the parking lot. The guy told him to look out right before we hit him with the car. Anyway, we just threw him in the back seat and took off. I'll always wonder what that guy thought. Story 30. The party was at my apartment. The theme was a very Gaga New Year's, and guests were expected to dress in Lady Gaga-esque costumes. My friends and I had been taking shots for hours while we got dressed up and ready for the evening, so I ended up passing out wasted around 11 p.m. A weirdo guy who had a crush on me came in my room and rousted me from where I was laying on my desk in a pool of watery tequila vomit, shaking me awake to insist that we kiss at midnight. We made out for a long time in the living room. I went to the restroom afterwards and realized the side of my face was crusted with my own throw-up, and he put his tongue in my mouth anyway. Story 31. While in high school, we went to Union Square in SF for NYE. Standing amongst the crowd, the dude in front of me turned around and puked all over me. I was covered in a stranger's drunky vomit from the shoulders down. It was literally the most horrible thing ever. Or maybe riding Bart home still drenched in stranger was. Needless to say, this NYE, as all since I got married, will be spent in my robe on the couch with my husband because I will not be fucking puked on by a stranger at a NYE event ever again. Story 32. I was in old Sacramento 1 NYE at a bar, waiting for the fireworks show with some friends. This guy got up to go get a drink and ran into the girl and spilled her drink all over her. He apologized and asked if he could get her another drink, and she was just yelling at him. She walked past him over to her boyfriend and told him he was some gangbanger or something, and pulled out a gun and killed him. The security guard tried to stop him from leaving, and the guy shot him too, though. I believe he lived. The cops shut down everything. Everyone had to leave the area. They blocked off. All of Old Town canceled the fireworks shows. This was at like 9 or 10 o'clock, so because of this couple, they not only killed a guy destroying a family's life, they ruined 1,000s of people's night. Story 33. When I was younger, my family would celebrate with a couple other families in our neighborhood and would do a potluck-type buffet. We brought sushi one year, and my dad got some actual wasabi for the occasion. An idiot friend of a friend bet another idiot he could eat all the wasabi in one go. Straight up ate it before anyone had a chance to try some. He ended up throwing up for an hour, and my dad was not happy. That poor wasabi. Gone like tears in the rain. Story 34. All in all, wasn't that bad, just horrible timing. I just recently started my divorce, moved out etc., wasn't in the mood to hang with my typical friends, had all but deleted social media. I always got a yearly invite to a NYE party via PSN from a former coworker. I figured what the and went that year. Party was small, mostly couples. I only knew the host. So I'm not really drinking but trying to make a NYE out of it. But these people were getting hammered. Seemingly out of nowhere, one couple's arguing in the corner. Another couple goes in to try and calm things down. Now that couple was fighting, host goes over, his wife joins. All three couple are having an existential marriage crisis in short order. A few were screaming divorce. The host's wife was crying he never loved her. I said it and bounced. Listened to the ball drop carving some backwoods roads that night. Story 35. Worked NYE at a swanky party hotel. A couple checked into one of our most expensive suites, then got in a huge fight in the lobby before even getting to the room. They almost got kicked out right there, but security separated them and they went separate ways to cool off. After an hour or so, the man starts going around the whole hotel asking if anyone has seen his wife. People were starting to get worried for her, until a while later she comes back down to the lobby. They meet and start to make up, until a random dude walks up to them and tells the hubby what went down. The woman apparently went straight to a random hotel room and revenge fucked two guys. The husband, of course, loses his and starts screaming the most derogatory names while the wife is yelling back all sorts of emasculating remarks. It was almost midnight by this point, and the hotel was already way out of control, so it took security almost 5 minutes to get back to the lobby to remove these two. By that time, the whole ground floor had learned all the lewd details of their relationship and her little adventure. Story 36. Had a NYE party in college. We lived in the party neighborhood which we named College Town. That name had since been stolen for the area, or bars near the uni. We're in traffic and see a smoking hot girl in a car next to us, and my roommate leans out the window, gets her attention, and invites her. She's hesitant and seemingly shy, but conceded and gave him her number. Several hours later at the party, there's a huge commotion. Not a fight, but a holy look at this. A crowd ensues in a concentrated spot, and right in the middle is the meek girl from traffic, wasted, buck naked on a table being fingered by a random guy. It was wild. Story 37. Field party. Back when I was in high school, 2004 I believe, we were partying in a field of a developing subdivision some 20 minutes outside of Nashville. It seemed like everyone from our school was there. Two guys show up from a rival school. They were known for starting as there were many after football game fights on Friday nights. They go around grabbing girls' asses just trying to be general pieces of. They happen to grab the wrong eventually. One guy who was a well-known scrapper at our school, we'll call him Pete. Pete was 18 and absolutely menacing, easily 6'5" and built like a brick shithouse. Mean, incredibly mean. Well, this dude grabs his girls and all Pete's friends rush over to basically threaten them to leave because they know someone may be beat to death tonight over this. I look over my right shoulder and see 3 feet wide of head and shoulders above everyone else's heads. He's not pushing people out of the way with his hands. He's literally walking at a strong pace and people are falling over in front of him as he has his eyes fixed on these guys. Pete gets maybe 5 feet away and this guy knows he's fucked. He pulls out a 3 to 4 inch pocket knife and buried it to the grip into Pete's stomach. Pete just pushes him over and this guy stumbles maybe 20 feet back. He looks down at his stomach and sees that he's bleeding heavily from his gut. This guy and his friend took it as an opportunity to GTFO. They run back to their car and just as they close the door, Pete does something I've never seen before and probably never will again. They had the driver's side window rolled all the way up and in one punch goes through the window and broke the guy's jaw and orbital socket, knocking him out completely. He then notices the passenger who was with him trying to get out, grabs him by his neck and drags him out the driver's side window, and proceeds to give him the most vicious beating I've ever seen in my life. Couldn't have lasted more than 20 seconds. It takes 8 of us to drag him off. This breaks up the party immediately. His brother rushes him to the hospital for a stab wound and bleeding from his wrist. The police and EMS show up to do their job, and the kid started seizing as they got him in the ambulance. He died 2 days later from a traumatic brain injury. Pete was charged with manslaughter, if I remember correctly. Ended up doing some time which didn't help. He came out stronger and meaner. TLDR, don't grab asses because a real-life Incredible Hulk may beat you to death. Story 38. When I was 15, I drank a whole 1.5-liter bottle of soda, which had 0.2% alcohol in it, in an attempt to get drunk. Damn, it was a wild night. My parents picked me up 1 a.m. Story 39. NYC here. I hate New Year's Eve, crowds, and Times Square on NYE is scary as hell. My own personal nightmare. I was working Hotel AV on NYE about 5 years ago. We had some monitors going in an outlet bar with a live TV feed, so it was just a babysitting gig. At about 10 p.m., I got a panicked text from the director of a hotel in Times Square. The coverage tech called out, and a meeting was going to start at 10:45 p.m. This hotel was across town in Times Square from where I was working. I had no idea if I could get through and make it in time. I left the hotel and took the most direct route, headed down 7th of right into Times Square. I was in a suit with my hotel name tag and armed with my hotel ID went to the Ring of Steel. I approached an NYPD captain and explained that I had to get through TS for an emergency. The captain looked at my ID and called over 2 officers who escorted me all the way from 7th Ave at 50th to 43rd and 8th. Got to the hotel in 20 minutes. Who the hell has a meeting at 10:45 p.m. on NYE? Got to the meeting room, corrected some bad AV preset issues, and got the meeting up and running. The people meeting were the teams that handle throwing the confetti off of the building roofs after the ball drop. It was a very cool learning experience. Details like removing rings and necklaces before the confetti drop to avoid injuring revelers below was very interesting. After they left for their police escorts to their buildings, I had to make my way back to my hotel. Unfortunately, I had no luck using my hotel ID to get back through the police cordons. It took about 2 hours to get back to my hotel. Story 40. My best friend, let's call her Natalie, invites her twin, let's call her Lindsay, her other close friend, and me for a potluck and board game NYE party at Natalie and Lindsay's home that they grew up in. All the SOs are invited as well. Well, her close friend has a new boyfriend that no one's met yet. Let's call her Danielle and him Greg. They show up like 2 hours late after we're all done eating and started playing Taboo. Whatever, it's fine. People are late. We spilt up to play boys versus girls. Greg gets the word spank and says, "This is what I like to do when I'm doing my girl doggy style." All the girls look uncomfortably at Danielle, and she looks embarrassed as well. It's taboo, so it moves on pretty quickly. 45 minutes to midnight and Lindsay gets really drunk, so she decides to nap in her room upstairs. Greg keeps pestering Natalie about strategies on getting Lindsay up so she doesn't miss the new year, and eventually drags Danielle upstairs with him to go wake her up. I have a puppy at this party, a corgi, to be specific. Well, because of its shape, my dog still didn't know how to go downstairs yet but can still run upstairs. She follows them up. My boyfriend follows after her because she's gotten stuck up there a few times tonight already. As he's waking up the stairs, he hears a door close and a lock click. He's gone to enough parties to know what that means. He calls out for our dog in case she didn't go into that room, but no dice. He walks downstairs and asks Natalie which room was Lindsay sleeping in. Oh, not the room they went into? Oh, that's your deceased grandmother's room. They are probably boning in? Nice. Well, luckily they free our corgi, but we all know what's going on. They are up there past midnight, and we're had to leave the party because we had an early morning. Well, the hits the fan after that. He starts getting really aggressive with Natalie, accusing her of making him feel dumb after he asked if Lindsay and her have the same mom. Duh. They are twins. He sneaks up to their upstairs bathroom twice to do coke. He tries to have with Danielle in his car, but she didn't want to. He gets physically violent with her, so she runs back to the house. He follows her in his car, verbally abusing her, and threatens to kill her, her family, and her friends now that he knows where she lives. I think he leaves after this, and Danielle stays over. They are still together, BTW.